Welcome back for another episode of Strive for 25. Joel Farrell here, and looking forward to sharing with you our guest.
All right, welcome to another episode of the Strive for 25 podcast. I've got an amazing guest, Taylor Adams, who is an entrepreneur, real estate owner, social media guru as well. Taylor, thank you so much for joining us today. And please give our listeners a little bit of a background on what you're into.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here today. So I'm a real estate investor, mainly focusing on out-of-state short-term rentals. And I have, over the last few years, taken that to my social media platforms to try and teach other people how to achieve financial freedom and gain generational wealth. My husband and I just retired from our jobs this summer. And so now I'm just like, got to teach everyone how to do it because it's so awesome.
Okay. So you just already got into part of your why. You got to teach people how to do it because you did it. And
Yes.
I love it. I love it. And the thing I love about this type of platform and social media is you have people that have gone through their own journey and come out the other side. It's like, well, shit, sugar, plum, fairy. I don't even know what you want to say, whatever expletive shit. I got to tell people because this is so cool to be able to be on path and, be on path versus the end result, right? Like you retired last summer, right?
Yep.
But the journey, like, let's talk about the journey real quick. So, like, where did it start? Like, how did you ever think it was possible when you were starting?
No, definitely not. So I always tell people if I can do it, I know that anyone can do it because I started completely by accident. So back in 2018, my husband and I were going to buy a single family house. We were going to do the whole white picket fence thing. We had just gotten married and we were like, oh, let's do this. But we were both working in the city of Boston. And so we wanted to live a little bit closer to the city. And that was going to be really expensive. So we were like, you know what? Why don't we buy a multifamily? We'll live in one unit, we'll rent out the other. And not knowing that was house hacking or that even was any part of real estate investing, we had no idea. And we started doing it. And then we were like, whoa, this is cool. Like, this is life-changing. And so we wanted to do more of it. And so we had planned on buying more things locally, but we were priced out of the area. It was too expensive. And we decided to start evaluating what other options were out there. And I think I mentioned this to you before, but I read this story about this woman who lived somewhere down south in a lower cost of living area, and she was buying up all these properties there. And I was like, well, that's, amazing for you if you live in a low cost of living area. Like, that's huge. And it was kind of an aha moment for me where I was like, well, I guess why can't we do it? And so that led us to investing out of state. We started investing in Tennessee, and we continued to do that until 2020, right at the beginning of 2020, when we started to dive more into larger properties. We started to look at syndicating deals as the general partner in deals. And the days when the world shut down, we were under contract on a 125 unit property, and we were going through the due diligence period, and we realized that they had misrepresented the vacancy rate. And so we backed out of the deal, blessing in disguise. We didn't know what was going to happen. Obviously, we were like, oh yeah, 2 weeks. And then the world opened back up. And over the course of 2020, I basically, while very pregnant, renovated our house hack and was trying to figure out what the heck we're going to do now. Like, we had all these plans, and it was a moment to really sit back and be like, are we happy with what we're doing? And we ended up in 2021 turning over our entire original portfolio and going full force into short-term rentals. And then, in 2022, we left our jobs. So it's been a whirlwind.
That's so crazy. And something that I want to dig into later about the syndication stuff, because, a lot of people that I talk to, that's kind of like your future ascension or goal that people want to get into, and bigger deals, bigger returns and scale and blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
And you kind of pivoted. And so I think it'd be really cool to dig into that a little bit later.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, going into COVID, right? And then you switch and flip and sell and then focus on the short-term rentals. So can you kind of give us an example? so you mentioned, you purchased a multifamily and then you house acted. So for the listener that wants to learn more about kind of what that meant in your situation, because people do it in different ways, right? So
Yes.
can we dig into that a little bit? Just how was that process? What did you actually do with the property?
Yeah. Absolutely. So when we originally were looking to house hack, we were looking for a 3-unit because in our area with the numbers, that would allow us to live for free. And that was the goal. The goal was to live for free if possible. But it was a really crazy time in the market when we were looking back in 2018. And so we were just getting outbid everywhere. And so we ended up finding a 2-family that was a lot easier to get into. It was an overlooked property. We love a good overlooked property. That tends to be our bread and butter. And we bought the 2-family. We did an FHA loan. So we did 3.5% down. We purchased that property for $625,000. So we did I think it was about $21,000 down on that property. And then we did most of the renovation work ourselves. We renovated the 2nd unit. We didn't touch our unit. And we got tenants in pretty quickly. Originally, we were charging about $2,000 in rent for that unit. I think our mortgage was like $3,400. So we were paying about $14,000, but we had been renting for like $2,500 a month. So to go from $2,500 to $1,400 a month was like, oh my gosh, we can save so much money now. We did dabble in using it as a short-term rental. The unit that we were using as a long-term rental for a period until COVID, then we switched it back to a long-term rental. But during the time that we lived there, we were charging anywhere between $2,000 and $2,200 in rent and being able to save a ton of money to continue to invest.
Cool. And so your main job, right? Because at that point you were still you were pregnant along the way, still doing other stuff. Can you share a little bit about kind of what else was going on in terms of just your baseline for employment and your background there?
Of course. Yes. So I had just transitioned out of banking and I was working in higher education. I was the director of operations and development for a university. So I was basically launching campuses across the US. So I was doing a ton of traveling. My husband, he was a software engineer working in robotics, and he was also doing a ton of traveling. And I think one of the things that we realized is we enjoyed some of the travel, but we enjoyed more of the travel when we could do it together and not when we were just off, never together anymore. And so that was one of the things that tied into our big why and why we wanted to keep doing this and find financial freedom. And once we started to dig into real estate, we started going to networking events like 5 nights a week. So we were so busy. We were like, I look back on that time and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm exhausted just thinking about what we were doing from 2018 to 2020.
That's awesome. So like I've shared this many times. I never had a mentor growing up, getting into my real estate journey and just kind of did and read books and just kind of by circumstance bought my second property, turned the old one into a rental, and then so on and so forth. Looking back on it, it's like, shoot, I should have found a mentor and not stopped until I found one. I should have got into a couple other investment groups. They were out there. I just didn't look hard enough. Right. So like, I'm just so curious how, like, you just did it, right? I'm going to go find a group. I'm going to learn about it, whatever. Not everybody's like that. Not everybody has that, like that go to just get the information and make it happen. That first step to getting into real estate, what was that turning point for you? Was it a book? Was it a conversation? Was it a mentor?
Yeah. So I think for us, as soon as we did the house hack by accident, what really got us into real estate was listening to the Bigger Pockets podcast. And once we started to hear that it was possible, that this was a thing people were doing. I had no idea. I had no exposure to this before. Nobody I knew was doing it. That's when we started, like I said, going to endless networking events. And we were just finding those on Meetup or Eventbrite. And networking with, oh my gosh, so many amazing people and so many amazing people that were doing things that were bigger than we could have ever imagined.
So the first one that you went to, were you intimidated?
Oh my gosh. Yes, absolutely. It's interesting. I don't know if it's like this in other areas of the country, but in the Boston area, the investor network is a very tight knit group of people. So we went to this event and everybody knew each other. Unless they were like a brand new investor, everyone was like, oh, hey, so and so. And we were like on the outskirts being like, I want to know those people. So I'm a huge extrovert. My husband's an introvert, but we are, I don't really even know how to describe it. We are very focused. And we went into these networking events with a plan, like a strong plan to make sure that we got what we were going there for.
Okay. Okay. I love it because that way you know what contacts to be
Mhm.
looking for, introduced to, and what questions to ask. And you're able to develop that kind of framework of even to know where to go because of those resources on Bigger Pockets, and I'm sure many other things, but
Exactly.
that research, that listening. And you know, at what point in time were you the person that everybody knew and wanted to network with? How long of a journey was that?
Yeah. So that was a really interesting thing. I remember we went to this networking event and it was it was a really weird moment where we were the most experienced people in the room and everyone wanted to talk to us. And we were like, this is, first of all, so bizarre. It was very strange. I think that was in end of 2019. So that was about, about a year and a half-ish into our investing journey. Everyone thought that we were really interesting because we were doing out of state and there weren't a lot of other people doing out of state. So they really wanted to pick our brains on that, which was really interesting. And getting to that point, I think was also a moment where we were like, we need to push ourselves more. We're not doing enough. We need to find places where we are no longer the most experienced, where we are no longer, the people with information. Like I never want to be the smartest person in the room. I never want to be the one who is doing the most. I want to be around people who are just like doing just things I couldn't have even imagined. So we really tried to push ourselves even beyond our comfort zone to find those people.
Okay. I absolutely love it. And getting to that point in like a year of just learning, going, doing, and then investing out of state. Not many people want to do that or are very scared to do that. And you guys took that step, I guess, probably without a whole lot of hurdles to overcome. But like, walk us through how that happened and kind of what was the turning point there.
Yeah. So basically once we decided that we needed to invest out of state because investing locally didn't make sense for us, we started evaluating markets that we thought would be a good entry point. And we were basing that off of basically what we were hearing on Bigger Pockets, what we were Googling. We had really no resources. So we were like, all right, we want to be in a place where there's no snow because we live in New England. There's a lot of snow here. And we were like, we don't want to pay for snow removal. So that was one of our indicators. The other indicator was population growth. We wanted to be in a place with a diverse economic mix. We wanted to be in a place that had maybe one or two headquarters so that we had opportunities for renters, people who actually would be able to afford to pay rent. And that led us to Tennessee. And once we kind of nailed down that we wanted to be in Tennessee, we flew to Memphis. So we found a property manager online who was also an agent. So we were like, perfect, let's meet him. So we met with him and he was really helpful in helping us understand the area. I'm a big advocate for using experts, like lean on your experts, like don't try and do everything yourself because you don't know what you don't know. So he sat us down and he like pulled out a map and he was like, this area is good, this area is not good. And we were like, all right, cool. So we flew home. We made a bunch of offers and I don't know, we probably made 10 plus offers for that first property, got something under contract. And then we just were like, all right, let's keep going.
So that next 12 months or so, how many properties were you able to accumulate in that short period of time?
Yeah. So we were able to get 3. And so we got up to 9 units before we dove into syndication.
So to remind me, so the syndication piece was one part of your journey, but then selling, that was after syndication?
That was after syndication. Yep, that's right.
Okay. So having the 9 units and then selling, how does that, like, what's the rationale of getting to that point? What's the projection? That's the end point? How does that all work at that point for an investor to say, you know what, I'm at this level, but I want to go somewhere else with my journey, and then how to get there? Like, how does that happen? What was your mindset?
So originally we had planned on having basically as many doors as we could. We were like, all right, we're going to have 1,000 doors in the next 2 years or something crazy like that. And so we were like, the way we have to do it is syndication. And we are very much like, let's just do this thing. We'll get in there. We had made amazing connections doing all of this networking. We had people who wanted to invest with us. And so we were going to start doing that. We realized after we took the step back during the shutdown that we thought that having a large number of doors would fulfill our goals. But when we thought about it, we were like, what we actually want is the cash flow. The doors at the end of the day don't really matter if you're not making money. So that was a time to reevaluate the properties that we did have. And so we looked at, what would it be if we sold the property? How much equity did we have? You know, we had done some renovations on these properties, so they were definitely worth more. Obviously, the market was in a really good place at the time. And so we looked at what kind of equity we had. Do we want to do a cash out refi? The rates were really great. Or does it make more sense to sell? And based on our calculations, we were like, if we are able to sell these properties and take out this equity, the ROI that we would be able to get in new properties would be huge. That would change the game. Because for us, we realized what we really wanted to do was not just work together, but replace our income and do that faster. And the thing that made the most sense to us to get to that point was to start investing in short-term rentals.
Okay. So you pull the cash, right? You sell.
Yep.
Well, how long did it take you to sell? Was it like a quick process, or was it a drawn out process? Or
yeah, so 2 of the properties were fairly quick. So that was no problem. Our 5 unit took a long time. I've made many TikToks about it. But we did end up finally selling it. We sold it in 2022, which was great. But we were able to use the cash from the first 2 to purchase the STRs. But it's a process. It's not going to be an overnight thing, regardless of how great the market is. Not every property is going to go exactly the way that you expect.
Totally. So, and again, for the listeners out there, so the properties in Memphis that you had accumulated to 9 units, those were all long-term rentals, right?
Correct. Yes.
Okay. And then did you had property managers running the day-to-day on those?
Yes. So at the time we did have property manager running those properties.
Okay. And so I guess from an out-of-state investor standpoint, from just like expectations being met, I mean, did the people over there, did they meet your expectations for the most part? Like, how is it doing that from 1,000 miles away?
Yeah. So I think that there was a big learning there. So with property management, as you know, it can be challenging because there's still a big piece of managing the manager. It's not 100% hands off, no matter how much anyone wants to say that it is. You have to make sure that they're doing the things that they said they're going to be doing. I think one of the big issues that I have had in the past with property management is there can be incentives in the paperwork and their contract for them to turn over the property. So instead of trying to keep someone happy in the property themselves, they're kind of just, getting someone in. And if they have to leave, if they're evicted or whatever, that's no big deal for them because they're going to get paid when they bring in a new tenant. So I think a big learning for me was to really do my due diligence in the contract that you're writing with your property manager and make sure that they're not being incentivized for something that is against your business needs. Because that's a very common practice that the property management will get paid for a new tenant moving in.
Interesting. Yeah. So for the listeners out there that have a tenant lease coming up, for example, how would you know, take those incentives and push them towards your favor versus the property manager in that type of renewal standpoint?
Mm-hmm. So I personally would want to put into the contract with the property manager that the longer that a tenant actually renews, they would have a percentage that would increase over time. So they would be more incentivized to keep someone in the unit as long as possible rather than turning it over, because they would be receiving a percentage of rent or maybe some sort of bonus at the end of the year. I would want to do some sort of incentive structure to make sure that they care more about keeping it occupied.
Gotcha. Gotcha. I'm sure we could probably go hours talking about property management.
Yes.
But there's a lot in this story to unpack there, because
Yeah.
not only have you gotten to the point where you were retiring from your job, right? Which is, I think, for so many people that I'm talking to personally, and see on social media, it's like, hey, I want to be building my future, not somebody else's future. I want to build my business, not somebody else's business. Um, and so we're seeing more and more of that. So not only did you accomplish that at a very young age, but you also did it seem like it's a pretty accelerated pace in terms of this
Yeah.
journey. So before I go into that, I want to keep going on this kind of arc of the process here. So you had the long-term rentals. So you sell in 2022, and then you start scaling into short-term rentals.
Yes.
And are those also in Tennessee or somewhere else?
One of them is in Tennessee, the other in Texas.
Okay. So one in Texas. Okay. And then is that 2 units or more than 2 units?
So they are 2 single family properties in each of the locations.
Okay, cool. And those are purchased in 2022, and I'm sure probably with some cash.
Yes.
Are those properties that you manage on your own?
We do. We self-manage those properties.
Okay. So if you were going to give advice to somebody out there about self-managing and also doing it from afar, across state lines, 1,000 miles away, what's the one piece of advice that you would give to somebody that knows to just starting out?
Systems. Your systems are everything. They're so important.
Cool. What was the biggest resource that you were able to leverage in terms of building those systems?
Yeah. So I think having your overarching property management platform is really helpful. For short-term rentals, you could use something like Hostly or Hospitable. For long-term rentals, you could use something like Rent Ready. Find platforms that are kind of all encompassing and allow you to create synergies with all of your other systems that you have.
Cool. So you retire from your job. You said, "Peace out. I'm leaving. Bye-bye. Never again," right? Never again.
That's the goal. Yeah.
Right. So, but real estate is just part of your journey, right? And there's other things that you're doing online, on Instagram, on your website, and your coaching platform, and all these things you're doing. Because at the very beginning of this conversation, you said, "Hey, I want to help the next person get here." And everybody has different visions and goals of what they want to get to, and their own traits and skills that they have in lanes. So I want to dig into that a little bit as well. So, your platform again, can you give our listeners kind of a quick breakdown on your platforms and where they can find you?
Yeah, of course. So I am mainly on Instagram and TikTok, though you can kind of find me everywhere. And that's just at Taylor Coleman Adams. And I just talk all things real estate investing tips and tricks. And then there's some money mindset stuff there too.
Cool. And then, if somebody's on your page and they want to say, "Hey, you know what, Taylor, I think I want your help to be able to help me on my own journey," then you got tools and resources on your webpage, and also links to be able to schedule calls or meetings to be able to get into your platform, right?
Definitely. Yes, absolutely. I have a lot of free resources that you can download. I have a real estate investor blueprint that's all about figuring out your journey, because it is really personal to whatever you want to achieve, whatever your why is, your big goals. And then if you're looking for more of a high touch help, then I offer my one-on-one coaching services, and you can join the waitlist for my real estate investor bootcamp, which is a 4-week accelerator course to get you to your goals.
That's awesome. So if I know nothing about real estate, I know nothing about social media, right? Like, because social media, I knew nothing about until like 8 months ago. And here I am on a podcast and on Instagram, like literally. So going from zero to something, like if I said, hey, you know what, Taylor, I need you to help me somehow build a business on my own, build something for myself on the side while I have my full-time job. I want to build this thing on the side to be able to accumulate more cash savings. And then maybe I invest in real estate or whatever else. You know, that journey going from literally nothing yet into something, like what's the mindset? What's the process? Expectations that goes into that?
Absolutely. I think step number one needs to be really understanding your big why. Like, why the heck am I doing any of this? I really am a believer that money can't be the why, because money is just a tool to do the things that you want to do. So it has to be bigger than that. There's someone, I always forget his name, who says your why should make you cry. And I love that. I think that's really powerful. So for me, my big why is that I want to have the time and financial freedom to spend with my family doing the things that we love to do. I want to be able to take a picnic on a Tuesday with my daughter just because I can. And to me, that is joyful, and that's what I want. And so then using that big why, whenever you discover what that is, you need to make sure that all of your goals align to that why. So if you have a goal that does not align to that, it's going to be really hard to achieve that goal, and you're probably not going to be super fulfilled on the journey and or when you get there. So discover that why and then plan your goals in accordance with your big why.
Okay. So I'm going to put you on the spot here.
Okay.
So let's say you're talking to somebody that is asking you to help them, and you're going through this process with them. Let's say it's your coaching platform.
Yep.
And this exact example of, hey, are your goals and your why, are they aligning? You know, is there somebody that comes to mind where like, hey, this stuff wasn't aligning and you need to start rearranging some stuff, like just to give somebody some visuals and examples? Does anybody come to mind? Okay. Cool.
Yes. I recently had a coaching conversation that just like completely pops to mind. So I had this wonderful woman that I was speaking with, and she was telling me that she wants to replace her income so that her and her husband can travel more. And she wants to do that in 5 years. And I was like, awesome, amazing. You can do it. I believe in you. Let's figure out how to do it. And when she came to this coaching call, she was like, okay, great. That's what I want to do. And so right now I'm looking at this long-term rental that's pretty close to me, and it'll bring me $100 cash flow. And so I'm thinking if I pick up this property, this will make sense for me. And I was like, okay, let's step back for 1 second. I want to think about, how does $100 in cash flow fit into your goals of replacing your income in 5 years? If we divide up, so say you want to have, I don't know, $100,000 in 5 years, how many of those $100 properties do you have to have? And then how much money do you have to put into those properties to make that money, to make that happen? And she was like, I guess that really doesn't align with what I want to do. And I was like, no. And so we talked about something else that made more sense for her. So she was also really interested in travel. So I was like, hey, maybe we should consider a short-term rental that you can also utilize as a place for you and your husband to travel to. And the cash flow per month was something like, I don't know, it was like $5,000 a month. And I was like, okay, that is a lot more aligned with a 5-year goal of replacing your income than $100 property. And at the end of the day, there's nothing wrong with a property that cash flows 100. But you have to know what your minimum cash flow amount is to be able to get to that long-term goal. Because if it's not aligned, then you're not going to be able to hit that goal the way that you want to.
Totally. I love that. And so there's probably a couple listeners out there that are wondering, well, shoot, if I'm looking, geographically, like we were talking about across state lines, and you can have that delta, that cash flow that's strong like that, like, what state was that in? And they can maybe reverse engineer where that would. What states are you seeing people really targeting right now? Because right now in this market, not to go on another tangent about the economy, but we're in a really unique market with housing prices have been going up, rates skyrocketed in 2022. They've come back a little bit in 2022, 3, and there's a lot of uncertainty of what to expect. And so people, are less confident in what's going to happen. So sorry, on that tangent, what are the short-term rental wise? What are some of the places that are still can be attractive for new buyers?
Absolutely. So the biggest thing when you are searching for a short-term rental market is what are established vacation markets? Because not only are we dealing with the price fluctuations and the interest rates increases, but we're also dealing with increased regulation. So you really want to find a vacation market that is established in a way that it is really hard for them to put regulations on the place. Not impossible, but hard because it's their entire economy. So we really love the Smokies. That's a really great market. Prices are doing some really interesting things there right now. So that's really, really exciting. I personally like markets that are year-round rental markets. There are some markets that are more seasonal, which are fine as well, but it just depends on your personal preference. But we really like the Smokies. We really like some areas in New England. Those are kind of our top areas at the moment.
Okay, so I've never stepped foot northeast of Maryland, so I don't know what New York looks like. I don't know what Boston looks like. When you say New England, like
Yeah,
like Jersey Shore, like Albany, like what are you talking about?
yeah. So we like Maine, New Hampshire, Vermont, particularly Maine and New Hampshire. They are a little bit more landlord friendly. Vermont is very tenant friendly, but a great vacation destination. The great thing about Maine, Vermont, and New Hampshire that we really like is you get coastal lakes, so you get summer, but you also get skiing because you're near the mountains. So I think it's a really interesting market. I mean, it's also somewhere I would love to go. Like I'd love to vacation there. It's not very far from me, so that adds a little extra check mark for me as well.
So would that be considered your all season or seasonal? That's all seasons, right? Because you got both sides, lakes and
Yeah,
skiing, right?
in certain areas. So when you get closer to the ocean, it's more seasonal. But when you're more center of the state, then you're getting more of an all season.
Gotcha. So, my short-term rental that I own is in Destin, and I would say it's probably pretty seasonal
Hmm.
because you got to your beach vacationers that want to see like St. Louis where I'm at. Like
Hmm.
there's like a speed line to Destin. Like people leaving St. Louis to get to Destin,
Oh
come
yeah.
March through July. But yeah, I mean, when October hits, there's rentals here and there, your holidays, but it is pretty slow, relatively
Hmm.
speaking. But you do make it up, with
Oh yeah.
the peak and for me, it's like May through July is really kind of your peak in terms of the highest rates.
Yep, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, the Florida Panhandle just has, I mean, it's got it going on. People are really
Yeah.
excited to snowbird there. So
Right. But the prices have really in the last 2 years, the prices have just skyrocketed.
yes, we
Um,
were looking at the Florida Panhandle when we were evaluating short-term rental markets, and we like it, but the numbers didn't make sense for us this time around. Maybe in the future.
right. Well, and that's the thing is that like when you look at the Smoky Mountains, right? I mean, the price point is just way more achievable and
Hmm.
enterable. I just made it up, enterable with
Yeah,
the prices just being at a level where the down payment piece of it, yeah, less barrier to entry.
exactly.
So we have this, short-term rental piece that we're talking about, right? And social media, the website, you're coaching, helping people, figure out what's their path to be able to build wealth. And, this social media thing, like I said before, I didn't know anything about social media until like July. Like I've lived under a rock for 20 years and, it is what it is. Um, so somebody that wants to be able to build a brand on social
Hmm.
media, whether it's in, hey, I've got a clothing brand, or I want to build a clothing brand, or I want to sell online courses, or I want to talk about fishing in the sea and whatever. There's a million people talking about a million things,
Yes.
and you just do your thing, find your tribe, do your thing, whatever. Somebody that wants to build a brand, knowing what you know now that you may not have known how many years ago. What type of advice would you give to somebody on social media?
Yeah. So if you're trying to create a platform on Instagram, I would definitely say niche way down. Get really specific with your content and what you're passionate about talking about, something you want to talk about constantly. And start engaging with your ideal audience and also people who are already talking about what you want to talk about. If you're interested in working with brands, also engage with the brands you want to work with. If you're interested in building a platform on TikTok, TikTok right now is really focused on you are your niche. So if you're starting a brand new TikTok, I would approach it that way. I would say that you are the niche. So all of your interests are interesting. Don't be one dimensional, and be really personal and build that personal connection with people. TikTok is a little bit of a different different animal than Instagram.
Right. So for your own personal journey, when did you hit the point where you said, you know what, social media could be something that I want to put more time and energy into? How long has it been something for you?
So it started in 2020. So after that, syndication fell through, and I was 4 months pregnant, and I was trying to figure out what the heck I was going to do. I wanted a creative outlet, and I found this person who was teaching how to work with brands. And I was like, oh, that might be cool. And so I joined that program. It was like $47 a month. And I would say that program actually probably changed my life, because I didn't know that this was a thing that you could do, that you could work with brands and make money with less than 2,000 followers. So that was when I started, and it really has evolved since then. I was really focused very much on lifestyle, baby, mom stuff when I first started my channels. And then it evolved to be more of what I do in my everyday life, which is real estate.
Love it. I love it. I love it. So, and that's what's so unique about this stuff is like social media, you do one thing and things evolve. It doesn't have to be, the end all be all. And like, for me, like, I didn't know exactly what I specifically wanted to talk about. I knew kind of the genre that I knew that I wanted to be able to talk about, wealth, building wealth, habits, things like that. But just the actual process of building the content and the storylines and the hooks and all that stuff, I didn't know much about that, but I learned about it, over time, just by doing. And over time, I was able to kind of fine tune my narrative, fine tune my voice. And so that's the one thing that I'm telling people, because what's crazy, I was just talking to my partner, Liz Armstrong, who helps me with social media for this platform. And then my other person, Jazzy, she does the production of the podcast. Thanks, Jazzy. Appreciate it. Mm-hmm. But like at the end of the day, it's like, you just got to go do it. You got to start somewhere. And so many people just, they get stuck in their own tracks and overthinking. And it's just do it. And over time, people will figure it out. And the other thing too, is that like people didn't look at my social media when I had 100 followers, when I had 1,000 followers right now, like not many people are seeing it. So it doesn't even matter. Even if you suck at it, it doesn't matter, but that's the only way you're going to be able to get better.
Yes.
Like, it's just,
it's 100%. You just have to put it out there. And I like to view everything I put out as just another data point. So like, did people like this? No. Okay. Well, I'll post something else and see if they like that. And then you'll start to figure out like, oh, people really like this type of content when I talk about this thing. And then just keep doing it. Just post the content, post your drafts, just get out there, put your face out there. We're all out there embarrassing ourselves. So just go along with it.
So your first dollar you made from social media, do you remember what it was and how it happened?
I think it was using an influencer marketing platform. So influencer marketing platforms are kind of like Indeed for influencers. It's brands posting different campaign opportunities that you can apply for. And if you are aligned, they'll accept you into it. And I don't know, I think it might have been like a baby balm or something, like a baby cream or something. And it was, oh my gosh. I look back on my photography and my videography skills back then, and I'm like, whoo, girl, you had some learning to do.
So so you have this platform, you connect with them, and like what are you actually doing for that brand? Just like talking about it, or like having a link on there? Like what like how's the dollars go back and forth? Like what actually happens?
Yeah. So it depends. So if it's just a straight brand campaign, like a sponsored post, then basically the brand is paying the creator to produce content that goes on their Instagram, let's say, to typically raise awareness about a thing. So say it's like some headphones. So they have these new headphones that are coming out for Valentine's Day, and they're like, hey, Taylor, you talk about headphones on your channel. Can you talk about our headphones? And so they'll send you the headphones. And then you create, let's say, a reel saying, oh my gosh, these headphones are amazing. Like you can follow this brand and like go buy it from them. And then maybe they'll send you not maybe, you've signed a contract, definitely signed a contract for like a payment, either ACH or PayPal. So that's one way. Another way is more of affiliate or commissioned, which I do less of because if you're just interested in starting to work with brands, this is my take on it. You can take it or leave it, but I believe that you should be paid for the work that you do. And if they weren't paying you to shoot the content, they would be hiring photographers, bringing in writers, producers, all of the stuff. And by hiring you, they're saving a ton of money. So they should be paying you for your work. So I think you should charge, like whatever you want to charge per hour is what you should get paid for the content that you're producing. But you can do commission work, which is basically anytime one of your followers purchases their product, you get a percentage. That's not guaranteed money, of course, and that's why I believe you should be paid for the time that you put into the work.
So just to stick on affiliate marketing for 1 second. So do all companies that you see on social media, do most companies have an affiliate program that you can enter, or is there like just pick a few of them that do it, or like how does somebody even know if that's even possible?
Yeah. So most brands work with influencers / creators, either doing sponsored posts or having a commissioned affiliate marketing sort of thing. I would say maybe 99% of brands do that. For them, a lot of brands will only do commission work. And that's usually smaller brands who just don't have the budget to pay. But if you want to find out if they have it, then there's a couple things you can do. You can go on these influencer marketing platforms like Sway or Social Native, or you could reach out directly to the brand, either via a DM or via an email pitch to see if they have availability to work with you in a sponsored or commissioned based way.
Okay. So at this point in time, right? So I think you have like 13,000 followers.
I'm getting close. I'm at 12,400 right now.
Okay. and you mentioned 2,000. Like how long has it been since you've been at 2,000? A couple years?
So yeah, I was at 2,000 back in 2020.
2020. Okay. So the next 2 years, like, what do you want to accomplish? What do you think is possible to be able to accomplish in terms of like your strategies? Like, because the followers are just followers, right? But like, it's only one data point, like you mentioned. I guess engagement,
engagement's very important for working with brands. Yep.
Yeah. So what do you see as the next level or the next thing that has to happen to be able to get to the next level?
For my business?
For the social media platform.
For social media. Yeah. So I think that to get to the next level, it's really putting out the most valuable content possible. I think that is one big thing that I've been finding is that if I'm not putting out this valuable content, that I'm not getting the engagement, people aren't seeing it. It's the algorithm isn't pushing it out to people. And so that has been a big thing in the last, I want to say 6 months, because I wasn't growing for a while. I was kind of staying pretty like steady, and I was having some moments with my content where I wasn't delivering the value I wanted. And so when I started delivering that value at the same time as engaging with people who were doing amazing content, that's where things really started to change for me. And so over the next couple of years, I think that by continuing to engage with those people who are doing amazing things, as well as engaging with my ideal audience, that's going to make all the difference.
I love it. Like you said, adding value, solving people's problems, things that people are engaged with. And those things change over time.
Yes.
in terms of the people that you're helping,
Mhm.
right here, right now, how many more people do you have capacity for to be helping them reach their goal of financial freedom?
Yeah. So I'm really hoping to help 1,000 people this year. That's my goal. I really, really would love to, because I just want everyone to gain financial freedom. I want everyone to be rich. Let's all do it, guys. But I typically am doing somewhere between 5 and 10 people every month, either going through my program or going through one-on-one coaching. So that is my focus right now. And I want to increase that because I want to reach more people.
Is there somebody that's gone through your process that like had this aha moment, like either on the phone with you or after the fact it came back to you, like that's, oh my God, now I get it. Holy crap.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I'm like thinking there's like 3 people that come to mind that that I that I think of. So one, she was a teacher, and well, she just changed careers, but she wanted to invest in real estate but didn't know how. And teachers are severely underpaid, and so this was going to be a way for her to do the things that she wanted to do. And I remember talking to her about what real estate could do for her future. And, she had teachers typically get pensions, but once again, they don't get paid very much. And so we talked about options for her. And so that ended up looking like her refining the house that she was in, and then buying a short-term rental. And now she's like well on her way to replacing income. She changed her job. Like she just like went on this totally different life path than what she had been doing for the last decade of her life. And it was so incredible to see her just like transform into this person that she wanted to be, but didn't really know if she could do. And like she totally could do it and she did it. And so that's what I always think of when I think of someone who just like, oh my gosh, just totally changed their life by doing the thing that they wanted to do, but they weren't sure that they could do it.
Yeah. And that's the thing that I just absolutely love about what I do, like on my mortgage job, and then
Mhm.
also on this job. And I can just see it in the passion in your voice, just helping that person just figure out this next level that they didn't even think was possible.
Yeah.
And like, I was talking to a client, who has a property. I'll just keep it very, very short, like military VA loan,
Mm-hmm.
has a house in a certain
Which is
area,
already transformative. A VA loan is already like, oh
right?
my gosh, yeah.
And they, this whole rule of thumb, hey, well, you can only have one VA loan out there. And that's a lot of the word, the rule of thumb, but like that's not accurate because it's all about entitlement. And then you start talking about like the DC area and,
Mm-hmm.
high cost county limits. And, you know, the county limit up there is like 1.089 million. And it's like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, I can go buy a new house with zero down in an area that's
Yes.
that price. And I can keep the old one as a rental. And then
Mm-hmm.
like, if I get shipped out somewhere else, then I can keep this one as a rental thereafter. Holy cow. Like they wanted real estate. They wanted to be able to keep both
Yeah.
properties in theory. They didn't have the tools or the wherewithal to how to do it. And it's
Mm-hmm.
like opening up this whole new world. And then now they have this passion. They want to do it. And then they want to go learn more and read more books
Yes.
and get that next piece of information. And it just continues to cycle and complement each other. So I just love
Yes.
this stuff. But like going back to the timing, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
for you, maybe you're the exception against the rule, right? Because your journey was an accelerated version, but like maybe it takes 10 years, maybe it takes 15 years, maybe it takes
Yeah.
7 years, whatever the case. And, for the people that I talk to, um, you know, and even myself, like I want results like in an hour. Like I can't wait. I can't wait
Yeah.
10 years. I can't wait 12 years. That's
Yeah.
just my personality. And maybe other people like that as well. And then it becomes a mental game. Like,
Mm-hmm.
how do you trick your brain to like forget about like how far away this is going to be? Oh, it's 10 years or
Mm-hmm.
15 years. Like, I'm going to take this win that I just had and I'm going to stack it. I'm going to take the next little bitty win that like, otherwise I would have overpassed and never even realized it. But I'm going to take that win
Yep.
and cherish it and then move on to the next thing. And like, next thing you know, a year
Yeah.
goes by and you got all these wins. And
Absolutely. Yeah, there's a couple things that my husband and I just sat down and we were doing it. So I think one of the big things that, because we have some, just like we like to set like really amazingly they're realistic because we're going to make them happen, but they sound totally unrealistic goals. And then we break them down. We make them really, really small so that we can work on them every single day. And I think that by breaking a goal down so small that you can work on it every single day makes you feel less itchy to get that goal, because you're like, oh, check that off the list. Check that off today. This week I'm done. This month I did this. So you're getting closer to your goal every single day by like making it so small that it's easy to work on. The other thing that we like to do, and we haven't done this yet this year, and we need to do it, is we get a case of mini champagne bottles, and we write on all of the mini champagne bottles some goals that we have for the year. So things that are quote unquote smaller or like medium size. And then when we accomplish that goal, we pop open our mini champagne and we each have a glass and we celebrate that win. And then for big goals, we get a big champagne bottle and we write that win on there. And oh my gosh, it's so fun to open the really big one. But it's the simple things. Like, how can you make it fun? Like, make every day fun, enjoy the journey. Like, yes, the destination is amazing, but if you're only worried about the destination, the journey is going to be exhausting, stressful, not fun. And you don't want that. We want to enjoy our life.
Yeah. Yeah. You don't want to just pass you by. No. But like, that's the thing, is that it's such a fast paced world, right? Like just talking about this here in the moment, I'm just thinking to myself, well, Sugar Plum Fairy, shit. This just happened a couple of days ago. And I was in the moment racing on to the next thing. It's like, I was looking at my notes this morning, because I write down a log of all the things that I do, the people that I talk to. And I was going through my notes. I'm like, oh crap, I forgot. That was actually a pretty cool conversation. Like, okay, that I need to remember that one. That was a great conversation for both parties in terms of helping each other out. It's like all these things happen. And it's like racing on to the next thing. And so taking the time to celebrate the wins. I love that. Popping the champagne, writing these goals on there. So do you guys have like a wine cellar? Do you put it in the basement? No. Like what you got?
So we keep some of them upstairs in our regular fridge. And then we have a freezer that my husband converted to a fridge in our basement that we took from our original house hack. So we have that down there. It's just like full of like wine and champagne bottles.
So the short-term rentals that you have, do you ever use them for personal use?
So we've been once to one of them. We just came back from that in November, and that was really cool. That was really weird because that was the first time we had ever been to any of our properties. And we were like, we own this place. Like, that's really bizarre. Like, that was very strange to us. We had never seen any of our properties in person besides the ones that we live in. And so I hope that with our future properties, we're thinking about New England as future STR markets. I hope that we'll be able to actually take advantage of the property a little bit more. If it's vacant, we can be like, all right, let's go up on a Wednesday and just enjoy it. That would be really nice.
So in terms of traveling, right? Like, what types of places do you guys like to go to? What's some of the most favorite places that you guys have traveled to? Let's just keep it in the United States.
Okay. Oh, all right.
I'm putting you on the spot here. Sorry.
I know, in the US. Let's see. So, we haven't traveled a lot in the last few years. But I think my favorite place that I've been when I was at my W-2 job, I was in San Francisco, like, oh my gosh, twice a month for a very long time. It was a very long flight. But I really love San Francisco. I think it's a really fun city. It also has, Napa is very close, so that's an added benefit. But Seattle is also oh my gosh, that was a really fun trip that my husband and I took. But we haven't really traveled since 2020 really at all. So I'll get back to you when we start traveling again.
I'm in the same boat. So we have twin boys that are 3. So they were born in late 19. So they're COVID babies. They, for 2 years, they never got out of the house.
Yes.
So I feel your pain, but yeah, I was in San Francisco last February.
Nice.
Coincidentally, to go watch a basketball game. I'm like the biggest Warriors fan, like east of the Rocky Mountains. So like, here's San Francisco, here's like Tahoe, and then the Rocky Mountains, and then like over here, St. Louis. Number one Steph Curry fan in the entire world. So yeah, I went to just go watch the Warriors play the Lakers. And I have some cousins that live in Sacramento. And so my sister came with me, able to spend some time. But like when you mentioned San Francisco, the first thing that came to my brain was Sausalito. Have you heard of Sausalito?
I have heard of Sausalito. Yes.
Yeah. Like just right across the bay, north, I guess
Yeah.
it's north, and like just this gorgeous, shoreline and the hills and mountains. And like, it reminded me of like being in Italy a little bit, just with, the shoreline and the nooks and the crannies and the rocks and, and the boats and all that stuff. But anyway, that
amazing.
whole area doesn't really allow short-term rentals. I don't think. I think there's a lot of restrictions, unfortunately.
Yeah,
I looked.
Yeah, there's a lot of restrictions out there, unfortunately. So I'll just have to do more hotel travel while I'm there.
Right. What's the next market? So you mentioned, near your area, but is there another hot market that's like you think is either up and coming, or maybe it's an existing market that's just, like it's solid that people just aren't aware about?
Yeah. So I think I got to go back to the Smokies for a short-term rental market. So I didn't really know anything about the Smokies until we started investing there. It is a very solid market, and I think people are intimidated to invest there because they feel like it's what people say is oversaturated. I don't really believe in things being oversaturated. I think there's always a way to differentiate yourself. So I think that's a fun opportunity to do that. I didn't know anything about the Smokies, but so the Smokies right now are having some interesting things happening because over the last couple of years, prices were going crazy. And because of the way the market is right now, I was just taking a look this morning, and there's some properties right by where our place is they're looking real interesting. And so I don't know, I'm like, I'm feeling a little like itchy to get back to get more places there.
So I love talking about, the process of a property, the numbers, the rationale somebody has, because when you talk to two different people, they're going to look at the exact same property differently, what they want to do with it, how they're going to look at the numbers and assumptions. Because unfortunately, you can only make your best guess on assumptions with it comes to property that you don't already own.
Exactly.
So when you're looking, because I love watching some of your Instagram stuff where you share, hey, a client reached out to me on this area. I think the latest one was Biloxi.
Is that how you say it? I was like, I'm not going to try and say this.
That's right. But yeah, you mentioned that. So it was Biloxi, Mississippi, in the Gulf, and using AirDNA, which is a great tool. Not always going to be exact, but it gives you a ballpark.
Yep.
So when you look at, say, a property in the Smoky Mountains, what are some of the metrics that you're looking to get to in terms of numbers? Hey, could be a good deal to dig deeper on.
Yep.
And I love your spreadsheets on Instagram. So if you want to see Taylor's rationale in person, like full on, like check out her Instagram, because she does share some really good stuff anyway.
Thank you. Yeah. So in the Smokies where we are located, I feel like we've gotten like really clear on the numbers, which has been really fun. So in the Smokies, you basically can assume, quote unquote, that you're going to get about 30K per bedroom. So it's really important to know your bedroom count. That's the big thing in the Smokies. And that is true in most locations, that you're going to be able to determine how much revenue you can get per bedroom. The other thing that I weigh against the bedroom count is occupancy rate. So a larger property, obviously, you're going to potentially get more revenue. However, it might be less consistent than a smaller place that has a higher occupancy rate. So when I'm looking at places in the Smokies and I'm evaluating the numbers, I typically will pull the AirDNA data and the data.rabu.com data, and I will find some sort of, average between the two. I find AirDNA to be most accurate. I wouldn't say it's optimistic, but it can sometimes tend to optimistic, whereas data.rabu tends to be fairly pessimistic. So I find that the numbers in the middle tend to be fairly accurate, if not a little bit conservative. So, I mean, you always want to be a little bit more conservative with your numbers when you don't know the market or you don't know the property, just like you were saying, like until you're owning it, you don't really, really know. So I use those numbers to really help me dig in. If there's rental history, great. But I take that with a grain of salt because mostly they're using property management. So I know I can make more money. So those are some of the kind of the overarching numbers and factors I take into consideration.
Okay. So let's say you've got the data of the gross revenue.
Mm-hmm.
And then someone's probably going to have a mortgage in some capacity.
Mm-hmm.
So you could, back into that. And then you have the other expenses. How do you tackle that part of it?
Yeah. So typically what I would do is I'm going to pull kind of the average utility cost in the area. I have a property there, so I can get kind of some general numbers. But if I don't, then I can either Google it or I can reach out to people in Facebook groups to find numbers if I'm like really trying to dig in really hard on utility costs. But you can get kind of an average. Pop those in. If cleaning fee is included in the revenue cost, then you're going to need to kind of like take that out. And in my worksheet, you can kind of wiggle that out of there to figure out what the real cost is. And then I add my systems in there. So hospitable, I add price labs. And then if there's additional insurance, Crystal Beach, for instance, flooding. So there's some additional insurance involved there. Any insurance having to do with your overarching protection for either your LLC or you as an individual, whatever your plan is. And then furnishing costs are another thing. I like to say that you're going to average about like 7,500 per bedroom. It can be more depending on the size of the property. So we tend to do about 25,000 for a 3-4 bed. So I always factor that in what the cost is. A lot of people forget about the cost of furnishing. It's expensive. And using all of that information, then I will be able to pull in the revenue occupancy rate and really pull out a number to get a little bit closer to accurate. For me, I want to be over 20% cash on cash return. Ideally, I would want to be 40-50%. Anything that's close, that's under like 2,000 a month in cash on cash return, on cash flow, for me is a little bit tight. So I want to make sure those numbers are really strong before I would say go ahead on something under 2K a month.
Gotcha. Okay. So I actually pulled up Zillow and I have
nice.
AirDNA pulled up. Like, I don't know this area at all.
Mm-hmm.
So if I'm looking at Newport or top of the world, or what is
it? Are we in the Smokies right now?
I think so. Gatlinburg.
Gatlinburg. Yep.
Okay. So like 995, 319. So a 3-bed, 2-bath, 1,700 square feet, 995 price. Does that sound right? In the right price range?
That can be, yes. It's pretty pricey in the Smokies. But we're up by Ober Mountain. It's the only ski mountain in this area of the country. And we're right down the street from it. I really like that area. Being up in the mountains, people like things with a view. So if you can get something with a view, then your numbers are even higher than what you might expect. But there's some really interesting properties up by Ober right now.
Gotcha. So Ober Mountain, which direction is that from Gatlinburg?
So it is
left or right?
It's a little bit northwest of like where you see the word Gatlinburg. I believe it's a little northwest of that. It's only like it's basically up a mountain above Gatlinburg, the downtown.
Cool. So I thought about sharing my screen on this just to show the listener AirDNA. What do you think? Should we do it?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. So the listeners out there that are just on, Apple or Spotify, try to make this explanation decent. Okay. So boom, I got Zillow up. Yay. Realtors who hate Zillow. Woo-hoo. I'm with you, but it's the best thing that's simple.
It's just so user friendly.
It is. So which one should I pick?
So let's go to your left and let's go to that $500,000 one. Just sorry. Right. There you go. You're going in the right way. Let's go to the 500 one. 500.
So I just highlighted on a 3-bed, 3-bath. That's $695.
Yep.
And then this one is a 3-bed, 2-bath, smaller square footage by a couple hundred. This one's 500K. It just had a
Yeah,
price drop. Okay.
Yeah, it
So
did.
this is
Oh, this
a
is a condo.
condo. Okay.
Okay, so let's not do a townhouse
Yeah.
slash
Yeah.
condo.
Yeah. I don't
Let's
like
go back to
condos.
that 695 one then.
Okay. So this is a home. Oh, it's
Oh,
also, this is a townhouse.
do we have maybe the filters set for condo?
Let me check. No.
Maybe just deselect and just do homes. I do like condos in this area, but it's a little bit easier to look at houses.
Okay. This one right
Yeah.
here.
Sure, let's do that.
Okay. So this is an 839,000 home. Got a little
Yep.
A-frame structure on top. 4-bed, 3-bath, 2,400 square feet. So I'm going to copy this
Perfect.
and then come over to Airdna. This is the rentalizer. Boom, copy, paste. And what it was is 4 beds,
I'm
3
checking
baths,
out
right?
Yes.
So it's picking up 3 beds. So we're going to switch this. So
Let's say 10 guests
10,
probably
okay,
for that
okay,
too.
okay, cool. Because I guess you have your 2 per bedroom, but a lot of these places will have a couch or
Yep.
pull out
Yeah,
or
exactly.
so
Update.
4 beds. Okay, so 91,000 is the annual revenue. So in watching some of the things that I see you talk about, you like to take the average daily rate and then the occupancy into your spreadsheet.
Exactly.
So $400 daily rate, occupancy 63%. And they have a pretty cool tool on here that maps out some of the expenses.
Yeah, that's really helpful. I think that's fairly new because I was like, ooh, when I saw that the other day.
Yeah. And so like I honestly I just started taking 60% of the gross. When I just want to skim at something to see, is that in the ballpark? I just take 60%.
We usually half it. We usually say 50%,
half
but
it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Just to be conservative, but it's probably closer to 60 or more.
Okay. Because I thought 60 was being conservative, but as I look at some of the things on my own stuff, it's like, oh, maybe it's not like too conservative, but okay.
Yeah.
So if I take 91,000 and I divide by 12, that's 7,583. Okay.
Yep.
So I'll remember that. And then what's our price on this one? 8 something?
817, 839.
839. So
it's been on 102 days.
If I'm talking to somebody, well, I guess I'll just use their payment thing here.
Yeah, let's see what the mortgage is. It's probably going to be in the 4s, I would think. Yeah.
So when you're on Zillow, make sure you hit the drop downs on these. That way you know what the price is and the assumption on down payment. So this one says 20% down, which in this case, for most investors, I would just assume 20% down just to make it very, very simple. Instead of having to deal with PMI or any other variables. Interest rate 5.66. I wouldn't personally use that rate just because if it's going to be a potential investment property, it could be a higher price up. So I'm just going to use 7% just for simplicity. And then you've got property taxes. I'm assuming this is right.
Yeah, I think the property taxes and stuff are fairly accurate.
So 5,077 as a payment. And then if I take this gross monthly rent of 7,583, I'll do the 60% just to make it very simple for our listeners. That's 4,550. And then your payment is 5,077. So technically speaking, you'd be at a cash flow shortfall.
Yep. Yeah. This one, definitely these numbers don't work. So you definitely have to evaluate this price here. We got ours for 787.9, which was a 4-bed. They were going for really crazy when we were buying like over $1 million for 4 beds, which the numbers just didn't work. So you have to be very specific with your numbers. We've been seeing some, I saw this morning a couple properties in the Smokies that were under 5 that needed some work. And I was like, ooh, that sounds like fun.
Right.
But that's a great way to look at it and just be like, all right, those numbers just don't make sense. And if they don't make sense for one property, what I always like to do is what number would make sense? Like if I was able to get that for, I don't know, maybe like 750, would the numbers make sense? And there's nothing wrong with just asking, like putting out that offer and seeing if you could make that work.
Okay. Zillow, here we go again. Kind of throw it in there.
See what you gotta say.
Okay, down payment is 150K. Now our payment is 4542. So closer.
Yep. We're definitely getting closer. So yeah, it's like what numbers would make this work? And I always like to the other thing as well to note, I don't know what numbers AirDNA is taking right now, but you really want to compare your numbers to more of a quote unquote normal year, which would be 2019. I don't know if this, okay, so these are taking into account 2021 and 2022 numbers. So when you nail down on a property with, this is me speaking to your audience, when you nail down on a market, I personally wouldn't purchase a subscription until you like are really certain you want to purchase in that market, because AirDNA is quite expensive and you have to pay per individual area, which can be kind of a problem.
Yep. No, it's so true. I mean, something that I pay for just because I have clients that ask me about it and help them, but definitely not cheap.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's important, 2021, 2022 were really stellar years for Airbnbs, VRBOs. How do you compare it? Now, also like the example, and I love you sharing that example. Hey, your goal is, I want to be able to get out of my job in 5 years, right? So buying a long-term rental that's cash flowing $100 isn't necessarily the thing that's going to like, accelerate that path to get there, because you're using that cash for down payment for that purpose. And once you use it, you can't use it for something else.
Yep.
Now, somebody else may have a different goal, right? And like maybe somebody that's 2 hours away, wants to use this for personal use in the winter or for whenever, when it's not peak, like maybe your analysis is different.
Absolutely.
And that's okay. But yeah, I mean, I just love talking about this stuff with different people that are in the industry, because there's so much out there to like know and absorb and like figure out what's what. Like it can be a very challenging to know what's going on.
Yeah.
And
absolutely.
people have different insights in different markets, just from their own experience. So what's your, like, you mentioned you haven't stayed at your properties in the Smoky Mountains, but have you stayed out there in general? Like, have you been there yourself?
So we only went the one time in November and
okay, so that was
there.
your Tennessee property. Okay.
Yes.
Sorry.
And that was the that's the only time we had ever been to the Smokies or there.
Was it like the best vacation ever? Like, was it amazing?
It was, we were absolutely blown away. Like we were shocked by how like cool that area was. Like we are literally in the mountains. Like we knew we were in the mountains, but we were like, oh my gosh, it was so cool.
I mean, not trying to plug your place or anything, but yeah.
Yes, please come and stay at our place. We love it. We just did a game room renovation. It's awesome.
Cool. I know we're coming up on time here. But last couple things, we talked about your why, right? The family being able to take your daughter out on a vacation or a walk, or go see a park or whatever it is, in terms of just being able to go. In terms of so Patrick Bet David is a guy out there who was a CEO of an insurance company and major influencer podcast person, and he kind of talks about the paradigm shift, and he labels it a paradigm shift, like this turning point in your life that just changes your trajectory and how you look at things. And is there a moment or a time in your journey that like, okay, this is just looking back on something that just changed the way you look at things?
Yeah, definitely. So I would say it was really the shutdown when COVID happened. We, like I was saying, I was 4 months pregnant. We were trying to figure out like, what the heck are we going to do here? Like, what do we even want to do? And I feel like we are so much more aligned with our why and what we want to achieve as people, because we were able to take that step back. And I don't know if that would have happened if the world hadn't been what it was.
That's awesome. Yeah. I mean, like, you can't control so many external things or third party things. All you can do is make the best of what you have. And if you can take an opportunity to analyze where you are and where you want to go and sync those whys and your goals, like that's awesome. And just me sharing to you, Taylor, like what's been so cool with having this podcast and being able to really kind of dig deep with some people that are really out there doing awesome and amazing things and showing other people that it's possible. That question about the paradigm shift, like as I've kind of gone on, I've started asking that question because I started looking at the people that were on. It's like, well, this person did this because of that. Well, that person did this because of that. And they never would have gotten out of their comfort zone. That wouldn't have happened. And like so many people, myself included, we have these times where like this thing happens. It wasn't what I expected. Failure, hurdles and things that knock you down emotionally, like you're just knocked down and don't know what to do. And you can either take it as a loss and have it keep you down or use it as fuel to go on and reach the next heights. And I just think I love that. And, the COVID thing has affected so many people in different ways, and to be able to come out with some broader vision and clarity is pretty cool. So one last thing, to give our listeners any ideas or tips, like in your opinion, if you're an aspiring entrepreneur, what's the one piece of advice that someone should carry with them through 2023?
Yeah. The longer you wait to get started, the longer you wait to see results. You just got to get out there and you just got to do it.
Love it. Love it. Cool. And then again, they can find you on Instagram at
Taylor Coleman Adams.
Taylor Coleman Adams. Cool. Well, Taylor, thank you so much for spending some time with us today. I had a lot of fun learning more about your journey and the why. And we'll catch up very soon.
Awesome. Thanks so much for having me.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.